Assalamu alaikum. Today on Neuron Academy, we discuss Ibn al-Nafis and his revolutionary discovery of pulmonary circulation. If you benefit, please support by subscribing and sharing as a sedekah. You know, every single second of your life, blood is moving through your body, silently, faithfully, and with incredible precision. But for centuries, the world believed a complete myth about this vital journey. Medicine was stuck, really, until one Muslim physician decided to trust evidence over tradition. So let's start with the one statement that changed everything. With just these few words, the physician Ibn al-Nafis stood up against more than 1,000 years of accepted medical belief. And look, this wasn't just some minor observation. It was a revolution that started by seeing the human heart for what it really was, and maybe more importantly, what it wasn't. To really get how huge his statement was, we have to understand the sheer scale of the error he was correcting. I mean, we're talking about a single, powerful, and totally wrong idea about our most important organ that held medicine back for over 1,000 years. So this was the theory from Galen, a Roman physician way back in the 2nd century. He basically proposed that blood just sort of seeped from the right side of the heart to the left through these tiny, invisible holes in the wall between them. Now, back then, they couldn't really dissect human bodies, so there was no proof. It was just a theory that got copied and taught and accepted without anyone really questioning it for centuries. Just think about that timescale for a minute. We're talking about a period of stagnation that lasted over 1,100 years. Imagine that. For generation after generation of doctors, this totally unproven idea was the very foundation of how they understood the heart. It just goes to show you how powerful an unquestioned tradition can become. But tradition, no matter how old it is, eventually comes up against integrity. And now we get to the physician who valued what he could see with his own eyes more than what was written in ancient books. His courage wasn't about fighting a battle, but about asking a simple, powerful question. So in the middle of 13th century Cairo, which was this buzzing hub of intellectual life, Ibn al-Nafis was doing more than just treating patients. He was carefully, meticulously studying anatomy. He actually looked at the septum, that wall dividing the heart, and he saw that it was thick, solid muscle. And it was from this direct physical evidence that he came to his incredible conclusion. That wall couldn't be broken. There were no pores. Galen was simply wrong. Okay, so if blood couldn't get through the heart's central wall, where did it go? Answering that question is what led Ibn al-Nafis to describe, for the very first time in history, the real path that blood takes, the system we now call the pulmonary circulation. He laid out this 3-step process with just amazing clarity. First, blood is pumped from the right side of the heart, not through the wall, but out to the lungs. Second, he figured that in the lungs it mixes with air and gets refreshed. And third, from there, this revitalized blood comes back to the left side of the heart, all ready to be sent out to the rest of the body. It was a complete, logical system, and it was absolutely new to medical science. And this is where the story takes a really tragic turn. This monumental discovery, which is a pillar of modern medicine, was written down in his Arabic manuscript. And then, for the Western world, it just disappeared. This brilliant truth was left waiting, hidden away in the archives of history. So you have Ibn al-Nafis describing pulmonary circulation perfectly, right around the year 1242, but it wasn't until the mid-1500s that European physicians like Michael Servetus and Rialto Colombo came to the same conclusion, probably without any idea that the path had already been mapped out centuries before. 300 years. Just let that number sink in. For 300 years, this crucial piece of knowledge was basically dormant, at least as far as Europe was concerned. That's 3 centuries of medical practice that could have been built on truth, but instead it continued to rely on a 1,000-year-old myth. But why? Why was Ibn al-Nafis so committed to getting this right? What drove him to challenge the giants of the past? Well, for him, science wasn't some cold, detached thing. It was a deeply spiritual and ethical duty. His first principle was that the human body is an amana, a sacred trust from Allah, may he be glorified and exalted. And when you see the body that way, studying it and caring for it isn't just a job anymore. It becomes an act of honoring a divine covenant. And that leads directly to his second principle. If the body is a trust, then trying to be absolutely accurate in understanding it and treating it, well, that's a form of worship. Precision in science becomes an act of devotion, a way to honor the creation of the Creator. And finally, here's the ethical bottom line. To just rely on guesswork, on unproven tradition, when people's lives are on the line, To him, that wasn't just unprofessional, it was a sin. This moral clarity is what drove his relentless search for evidence-based truth. He wasn't chasing fame, he was chasing certainty because he felt it was his sacred duty. So why does a 13th century discovery matter to us today? Because the echo of his work is all around us, in the very foundations of modern medicine. Let's take a look at the legacy of this hidden truth. Every single time a cardiologist diagnoses a heart condition, or a surgeon performs open-heart surgery, or a patient is monitored in intensive care, they are all relying on a basic understanding of blood circulation. The work in all of these fields would be literally impossible without the knowledge that Ibn al-Nafis first laid down. There's this common false narrative that says the Muslim world only preserved knowledge, that it didn't lead in science. The story of Ibn al-Nafis just shatters that myth. Your ancestors corrected the world, even when the world wasn't ready to listen. And the lesson there is so profound. You don't need validation from others. You need the internal integrity to seek the truth, just like he did.
He chose hard evidence over comfortable tradition, and his discovery is still saving lives centuries later. His courage came from his pursuit of accuracy, and that was driven by a sacred sense of responsibility. And that really leaves us with a question to think about. He stood for truth in his time, against the massive weight of a 1,000-year-old error. So what truth will you stand for now?
Presented and created by Norin Studio.